What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of That Game Rules, yet another subpar retro podcast. I'm your host, Scuba Steve, and today we got one of my favorite games. We're going over Super Mario 64 for the Nintendo 64 only, because every game for the 64 had to put a 64 after it. I'm okay with that. Before we get into the game, let's talk a little bit about the show. I want to apologize to Mario 64 because it's such a great game for me to do on my first episode where I have no idea what I'm doing, but we're going to make it through this. So let's talk a little bit about the show first. Every week we're going to pick a game. We're going to go over box art, visuals, characters, levels. We'll check out some comments and reviews and a bunch of other stuff. At the end of the show, we're going to give this game some awards, and we're going to find out for sure if that game rules. I'll try not to sound so much like a librarian, but you'll have to deal with the ums and the uhs and the so's. A little bit about me off the bat. I'm probably just like a lot of you guys out there. I don't do any of this. I have a 50-hour job I hate, and other than that, I'm married and I got a bunch of kids, and I'm just trying to hide in my basement for an hour or two and talk about some video games. I want to hear from you guys, so send me a message at thatgamerules@gmail.com. Tell me what games you want to talk about. Send me your memories, favorite levels, those old playground rumors, some fun cheats, and let's just talk memories. Let's talk nostalgia. Because when it comes to this show, it is very light on research. Besides the fact the research I'm doing is off the internet, so you can't believe half of that anyway. But mainly we're just going to get together and we're going to talk about the memories, what it really felt like to play those games. And I'm going to go through the game as much as I can, level by level, power-ups, bosses. Not a complete walkthrough. We're going to bounce around and try to think about the things we remember from some of those old nights of walking through Blockbuster, some of the good old, some of those birthday parties when we were kids, those overnighters. Let's talk about those again. Let's try and bring back some of the positive aspects of gaming. And it's really hard when you're talking about these old games, too, to judge them based off of when you played them 20, 30 years ago. Versus games now, but we're going to do it anyway. And we'll let the haters say what they want, but we're going to talk about these games, make sure they stay around, make sure our kids get a chance to play these things someday. You can also, as I figure this out, sign up for the newsletter at thatgamerules.com. I'd like to be able to send that out with award nominations and be able to get your guys' comments and reviews on the show. Until then, I just pulled some comments and reviews off the good old web, so we'll see what those guys have to say about it. And I don't want these intros to be too long, so I want to get right into it. We're going to kind of set the scene and set the mood of going back to 1996. Before we get straight into the game chat, we're going to talk about some of the things around this game and some of the things you might have been doing at the same time you were thinking about Mario 64 or maybe reading about it in good old Nintendo Power. But in order to get back to 1996, we're going to have to get up to 88 miles an hour. We're going to have to enter ourselves a little time warp.
Have enough road to get up to 88.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
All right. Now, welcome back to 1996. This time warp is brought to you by Shark Bites Gummy Fruit Snacks. Now, I want you to do something, listener. I want you to go into your kitchen. I want you to go into your cabinet. And I want you to take all the fruit snacks you currently have in there. And I want you to load them into a cannon. I want you to fire them into the sun because they all suck. What you need to do is get you a time machine. Go back to the 90s. Get yourself some Shark Bite fruit snacks, whatever company made them back then. They've probably redone them and they're probably trash. But anyway, you're going to get these Shark Bites, these packs of delicious little shark shapes. You're going to find probably some hammerheads in there. Maybe they're orange. Maybe there's going to be some green tiger sharks in there. You're going to eat those on your way to the best part of these Shark Bites, the coup de grace. is those little solid white, great white sharks. Listener, if you're like me, if you're in your 40s, maybe you can close your eyes and still taste those sweet, sweet, solid white Shark Bites fruit snacks. They're not around anymore, so get yourself a time machine. Go find those. That's our fake sponsor for the day. Oh, are also brought to you by Handy Snacks Cheese and Crackers, but only the ones with the freaking red sticks in it. Bring back the red sticks. You got me dipping my crackers into cheese like a savage. I should be spreading them like a dainty little English fellow. Anyway, thank you, sponsors, for sponsoring this Time Warp. 1996. What were you guys doing? Some of the movies around 1996 coming out. Scream, James and the Giant Peach. We had Matilda, Space Jam, Jingle All the Way, Kazam, or possibly Shazam if you're in some Mandela Effect universe. Yeah, same thing with movies and games when you think about judging stuff from back then. If you were to ask me now, out of those movies I listed, Scream is a classic. I'm pretty sure I saw that in the theater when I was 12 or 13. But man, Jingle All the Way. I don't know if I've grown up and just become this Schwarzenegger fan, especially his comedy chops, but that somehow has made it into my yearly rotation with the kids and everything around Christmas time. But man, back in the day, I'm pretty sure it was all about Space Jam. That was the big movie coming out. I was always a fan of those kind of live action cartoon mixes, obviously with Who Framed Roger Rabbit being kind of the main one. I used to watch that a lot back in the day. I mean, TV shows coming out. As far as came out that year, we had Hey Arnold, so we're probably starting to sneak into that Snick era. You had Dexter's Laboratory, so you're starting to sneak into the Cartoon Network. Leave that on all night, let that roll. The toy of the year was Barbie. So, I mean, that tells you pretty much how things were going back then. As far as toy of the year, but some of the popular toys, Tamagotchi, if you remember those. I was just looking through an old 96 Toys R Us ad, and I saw that was the year they released their Toys R Us edition N64 with the gold controller. And I think those are fetching a pretty penny nowadays on eBay. But the year the 64 came out, you had all the other competition. You had your Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. You had Game Boy and Game Gear out. But then you also had PlayStation 1 coming out with Sega Saturn kind of right next to it. And research aside on that, I think Sega kind of bit themselves. They couldn't really stay ahead or at least compete with the 64 or the PlayStation 1. Excuse me. They seemed to release a lot of like add-on peripherals, and that seemed to maybe throw a lot of people off. And eventually that thing stacked up like a Jenga tower when you just kept adding drives on top and other things like that. I never had kind of the full Megazord of the Sega systems back then, but I did grow up with a Sega Genesis right next to a Nintendo. So I was one of those weird kids. I didn't even know there was a Nintendo Sega war, essentially, because I was just spoiled. My stepdad at the time liked video games as an adult, which was really weird back then because it wasn't seen for anything besides something for kids to do. So I grew up kind of spoiled playing both of those systems. Some of the games released in 96, even though Pokemon Craze didn't really hit till a few years later, I think, but Red, Blue, and Yellow released 1996 for the Game Boy. You had Resident Evil 1 right up with Tomb Raider 1 on the PlayStation, so they didn't even know at the time the kind of IP they're starting to pump out. But then also on the back end of the Super Nintendo in 96, you had Donkey Kong Country 3 and Super Mario RPG. And I love some of the games that came out on the end life of these systems when they really cranked those consoles up and figured out what they could do with them. Because Mario RPG is still one of my favorites, and I think the first RPG I played that even introduced me to RPGs, which I'm not a huge into RPGs now, but Mario RPG was classic, and Donkey Kong Country 3 was a great game. Number 2 is my favorite, but just the graphics alone on what they could push with that system on some of those games toward the end. So getting back into Mario 64, I like to stop for a second and I really like to check out the box art. Because if you're like me back in the day and you just rolled down that Blockbuster aisle and you had one side of box art and you had the other side with a couple of screenshots, maybe a small description. And other than that, you're taking that game and you're just hoping for a good weekend. And I think that's why some of these games are so popular is even niche. Everyone kind of has these weird favorite games, and it's almost like what they were stuck with at Blockbuster. And I feel the same kind of way with like TV back then, because you only had so many channels. There might be a movie on. You might even be jumping in this movie halfway and have no real interest to watch it, but it was the most interesting thing on, so you end up watching the back half of a movie. You might like it. You come back, you figure out what it is. Chances are it was a movie that was not even appropriate for anyone your age, but you're almost forced into these things, and then you turn out maybe that these shows or games are some of the best things you've had in your life, and they continue to be memories forever. And that may be lost today because between streaming and the amount of games there are, even on gaming streaming services, you don't have a chance to just kind of be stuck with something to make it through. And so, I appreciate the box art on Mario 64. I mean, there wasn't anyone who wasn't already going to play this game as soon as it came out. You were either reading about it in magazines or hearing about it on the playground. But, I mean, box art, you got Mario right on the front, super colorful everywhere. It's going to catch your eye. And then, of course, they've got the power-up right on there. You've got Mario with his wing cap. Being a first 3D game, realizing you're going to fly around, made a lot of us pretty excited, even though, the Super Nintendo with the cape, it was still, I feel like if you didn't get the hang of how to do the cape with like the up and down and the catching the air, it could be frustrating as a little kid as opposed to the old raccoon tail. And not to say that flying was super great in this game, but they're going to kind of go with, if it's Nintendo, they're going to go with their gimmicks. In this case, you get a couple of screenshots on the back. I've got my copy here. I don't know if I'll ever show video, but this one's signed by Charles Martinet, if that's how you say his name. I got him to sign this at a Comic-Con a few years ago. He's even got it made out to Super Scuba Steve. And I feel bad for some of these guys at cons because I feel like they know it too. Half the stuff they're signing, someone's just going to turn around and sell it on eBay, which is why a lot of the signature prices and stuff are pretty high at cons and things like that. It'd be nice if just fans could get stuff, if there wasn't such a market for re-signed things. But, this particular copy is just going to go to one of my kids someday. So, anyway. So box art aside, a little bit more about Super Mario 64 before we get into like straight game chat. Director Shigeru Miyamoto developed this game, just thought of this game while working on Star Fox for the Super Nintendo. And just that sentence alone is just like, I don't know if anyone else is such a fan of Shigeru as I am. I know a lot of people are, as far as this guy being like the Jesus of video games. But it's like to be working on such a great IP as Star Fox while working on Super Mario 64. And it's like when it comes to, it's like if someone came up to me and was like, hey, guy, you can have this life over here. Let's say, what is Kelchi, that football player? Let's say you can go win some Super Bowls, go home, to your girlfriend, the hottest singer in the world. You can have that life, or you can be this 70-year-old Japanese man who's made video games his whole life. And it's like I would step in his shoes in a minute. And that's not exaggerating, because ask my wife, she'd probably be like, yeah, he probably would be that weird Japanese guy. But it's like, man, just the ideas floating around his head when you have like a weird minimal technology, to come up with essentially a tech demo as far as a game, and then you build your story around that, maybe as far as what do these pixels look like and how can we describe this as an adventure. And I just think it's really neat. that he's still around. He's, as of right now, working on like the Super Nintendo parks going on around that I'd love to make it to one day. But anyway, great guy, Shigeru Miyamoto. Other notes, this game was commercials it had. There's still no internet, so we had commercials, but I've read too that it was boosted mainly by advertising campaigns, and then it had boosts set up at E3, which is like, and then that made me kind of sad because who doesn't miss like E3? The internet kind of turns, every console has their own kind of announcement with their online announcements, same with like the Nintendo Directs and things like that. It all kind of makes you miss those old gaming shows from back in the day and the releases they'd announce there, and you'd see the crowds cheering and things like that. So RIP to E3. And then a couple other just interesting notes about Mario 64 at least. First appearance by Charles Martinet as far as voicing Mario, and I think he's done it up until he just recently retired to become a Nintendo ambassador. So whereas he's not voicing Mario anymore, but I think he still gets to represent Mario and do these cons and still kind of make his money off of that. So it's nice that Nintendo allowed that and then just cut him. So Mario 64 originally was being developed for the Super Nintendo when they developed the FX chip that went into Star Fox and the Little Gem Stunt Race FX. So originally it was codenamed, I think, Super Mario FX before they switched to 3D for the 64. And also the other note on that, before they ended up with Super Mario Sunshine for the GameCube, the code name for that was Super Mario 128, I think, which I just thought was kind of neat. You found a lot of this stuff in Nintendo Power Magazine or EGM. Another interesting note I read is that they decided they had it set for a Christmas 95 release, which I feel like every video game's trying to hit like a Christmas. That seems like your biggest selling point. But they actually pushed it back to summer in 96. And he said, quote, the reason for that was, quote, game creators can finish games quickly if they compromise, but users have sharp eyes. They soon know if the games are compromised. So he asked for 2 more months, the developer, Miyamoto, and they gave it to him unconditionally. So it's like so much faith in him already between all the games he had put out to delay a Christmas launch for a brand new game on a brand new system, simply based on the fact he thought his fans would be able to see if it was half-assed or not. And I mean, even today you can see that Nintendo still seems to kind of follow that stuff because they put out really great polished games. And if you don't, you end up, with a fiasco. Still the biggest one in my head is the Cyberpunk, as far as just releasing unfinished games, and it makes you wonder about the real executives behind it pushing this stuff out. And you've got all these developers under a time crunch trying their best to get these games out. But Nintendo always seems, for all of its gimmicks and the weird things Nintendo does to this day, it's like there's a reason their IP is what it is and why they can keep cranking out these games. So I think we'll wrap up our time warp here. The worst part about 1996 is that the song The Macarena came out. So maybe we'll erase that while we're here before we hop back to the future. But we're going to go ahead and play a little more music, probably my favorite track from 64, and we're going to just talk straight gameplay after that. Let's do it. That's the best part. Oh, I just keep listening to this if Nintendo wouldn't sue me. Anyway, let's get into some straight game chat here about Mario 64. We're going to open it up with a few comments I pulled from IGN. Currently has this game at a 9.8. And These Acid Words says 9.8 is too low for a game that changed everything. And again, it's hard to, a lot of these reviews are new. You're reviewing a 30-year-old game. It's going to skew things. Nostalgia is going to skew things. So do you give a game a good rating because it was the first, because it was innovative, or do you straight base your rating on, if I played this game today, what am I going to rate it? And if that's the case, are we updating ratings every 5 years? So is everyone going to still feel the same about this game in 5 years? We don't know, and everyone's so it's the balance of subjective versus objective. I love this game. Would the masses love this game? And then it's like, how do you would an adult like this game, or would a child like this game today? So there's a lot of hard things to say there, but we'll break through. I mean, it's a high rating for me. Scooter here says, my favorite 3D Mario game. The camera controls have not aged very well, but the platforming is still great. Each level is also very unique, and it is fun finding each of the stars. So that's just a pretty straight comment, and you'll see a lot of that. If there are bad reviews, it's going to be usually on the camera or some of the movement caused by the camera. But really, when it comes to like Mario 64, it was kind of I think the best option to just kind of have here's a flying guy with a camera, and where you can kind of move it here and there. But keep going on these comments. Cactus says, this game is and forever will be better than The Last of Us. So that's what I was just talking about. Like, we're comparing Mario 64 to The Last of Us now, and I don't even know if you can do that. So how are you comparing that? I mean, The Last of Us is a better game this many years later, but what is the review based on? Now, if it's like, if you had a choice to play The Last of Us or Mario 64, I mean, if the review is based on that, then that can just be based on your own mood. But I feel like at any given, it's usually platformers, I feel like you get more replay out of than such a linear game like Last of Us. But anyway, another comment we got here that I liked. Bug says, the reason why I don't get nostalgia from Mario 64 is because I've been playing Mario 64 ever since. And it's like, so I like that, where it's like, how can you have nostalgia for something if with the nostalgia being you haven't seen it or heard it in a long time, so it brings back memories. But in Bug's case here, he just says, I never stopped playing Mario 64, so there is no nostalgia for it. So I like that one. That's a good one. And again, a lot of the negative ones seem to be based on the awkward camera and everything just kind of being outdated. But as we're going to get into it here now, as we start talking about the game, blow in that cartridge, whether science tells us it's okay or not, and you pop that thing in there. I'll tell you real quick, my first experience with Mario 64, I had Blockbuster used to rent the consoles themselves in these giant foam-lined CIA briefcase-looking things. And I mean, my dad, who I didn't live with at the time, he was like a weekend dad, we rented the console. He had like the biggest CRT you could buy at the time, and like a huge stereo surround system, because he was real big into movies, not so much games, except when I was over there. So we rented that big briefcase, opened that thing up, and just a gold light shined out of it, like the briefcase from Pulp Fiction. And, you hook that thing up, and, you make it past playing with Mario's face there at the beginning, which I think was just part of their 3D tech demo. They just kind of added into the game at the beginning. I don't even think I realized you could play around and stretch his face around and stuff till a few tries in the game. And actually, I remember that then becoming, I think, a mini game in one of the Mario parties, as far as squishing around a character's face and matching it up. But anyway, we won't get too detailed. You hop into this game. It starts out just like a brand new 3D game should, with the camera kind of zooming around. Your warp pipe pops up out of there, and Mario jumps out. And from there, it's almost the best intro you could have to a 3D game, as far as it gives you just this garden castle area to play around with, no enemies to worry about. So right off the bat, you're practicing your jumps. The castle in the background is kind of the obvious go-to spot. You're going to want to get to there eventually, but until then, you kind of run around and do some jumping. Even weird things like I think they have butterflies floating around that as a kid, I was just like, man, that's crazy detail. With the beginning of the game, the story-wise, obviously it's a Mario game. In this case, Bowser took Peach. I think Peach was in the middle of baking you a cake or something, and you head to the castle, and Bowser took her, and I don't know, took these magic stars, and you're gonna get, I think 70 you can beat the game with. Again, I don't do a lot of research. We're just gonna talk about it, but so you jump around and head on into the castle, and it's all pretty straightforward as far as you get a couple of text blurbs telling you what to do, but you're going to head to your first door, with the castle being this kind of hub world, which was really cool too. It could have just been, a flat map. You walk over and maybe jump into a pipe to get into a level, but at some point they decided on a hub world, which a lot of games have copied since then, as far as just kind of having a main area. You're safe, there's no enemies for you to constantly go back to, figure out where you're going next, and head off to your next world. So we'll break down a little world by world here. And if you don't know Mario 64, you're essentially hopping into a world, picking a star to get, and then as you get stars, you can unlock the other various parts of the castle. There's a basement, there's an upstairs, there's a few secrets here and there. And they have pretty much every kind of level you could think of, as far as your kind of grassland, your mountain, your snow level, your lava level. It's got a ghost house in there too, so it's still pulling a lot of stuff from the other games into this and just kind of updating the levels. So we head in, and I don't know if it's my favorite level. We're going to figure out our favorite level at the end here. But your first level right off the bat is a Bomb Battlefield. And as you hop into these paintings, so these worlds, a little title screen pops up, and it gives you just a kind of a vague hint of what star you can get or where the star might be. Also, every level has 8 red coins and 100 yellow coins. So one of the stars is getting 8 red coins, 100 yellow coins. So that'll take 2 stars right off the bat. I think there's 7 total in each level. So you'll have another 5 stars that are just going to be level based, and as far as what you can do, even though I think I found towards the end game those 100 coin stars to probably be the hardest. And I feel like especially the rainbow ride, is that what it is, where you're on the magic carpet? I think that was the toughest 100-star one, if I remember, for myself. So, Bomb Battlefield, it'll give you your first hint, which is Big Bob-omb on the summit. And so from there, you see a kind of a mountain in the background. You can assume you're going to climb to the top of there, in which case you throw King Bob-omb around a little bit, and boom, a star pops out. You grab the star, it shoots you right out of the level. From there, you can hop back into the level, or you can go unlock some new doors. So one of the cool things I liked about Bob-omb Battlefield was, number one, if you found what might be my favorite power-up in the game, even though it's not, I guess, a hat power-up, but the bouncing on the turtles and then riding their shells like a surfboard, that kind of blew my mind. The other big thing about that level is the giant chain chomp it's got. At one point, you have to knock it off its chain, and it breaks the gate and gets you a star. But just seeing something so huge in 3D, and I like just kind of the main level as far as what a 3D Mario level kind of could be, as far as it's got grass, rock, just kind of your normal, a few blocks here and there, and then your old pals Goombas hanging around, and at one point you race the turtle, and then you can also see already right off the bat the little kind of half seen like the red switch blocks, so you know that you'll end up finding those at some point and coming back to see what those do. I think in this case was activate the hat will be in the red boxes. So Bob on Battlefield, again, I like the chain chomping that guy. Let's throw on another level. You got Womp's Fortress here. That's almost like your first kind of big tower level as far as like 3D platforming. Towards the top, you kind of do this jump around the tower as little platforms are coming out. You've got some thwomps in this level, and it's got some water, but you're not swimming in it yet. And it also features kind of like these thin wood planks, and that kind of lets you see what you can do with the joystick on the 64 on like the sensitivity, because it's the first you're really playing with a joystick at home. So you could just kind of barely crank on that joystick and he would just kind of tiptoe. I think you could tiptoe past some sleeping piranha plants as well. So the next level after that, where you just heard that music from, I think, is Jolly Roger Bay. And I mean, the big kind of memory from this level is the giant eel that comes out of the ship. I thought that was cool. And it's kind of your first introduction to 3D swimming. I like how they did a health bar in this game versus like your shrink or lower with like a mushroom. So in this case, you have like a pie wedge of health and you use coins to replenish that, or in this case in the water, it starts to tick down. And if you swim up and get some oxygen, your health life will refill. It's also a little sneaky way if you ever need health to just jump in some water and swim out. So, I mean, swimming aside, and it seems like I don't think I've ever had a good time swimming in any 3D game. I get that, I mean, we're going to do that. It kind of has to be done for variety. But man, they were rough on the 64. That's why Metal Mario is another one of my favorite power-ups from this game. Let's move out of Jolly Roger Bay. We'll talk about Cool Cool Mountain. And everyone knows that who's got it worse? Mama Penguin watching her child get thrown off a cliff over and over, or the baby penguin being maliciously thrown off of cliffs for his entire existence. This level starts out, it's got kind of like a cool slide race at the beginning. So again, it's just doing a lot of new things for 3D. Also, eventually you open up cannons to shoot yourself, and those can be tricky trying to aim maybe for a certain coin in top of a tree or something like that, or trying to land on a platform. One of the cool, neat things was like in the snow level, if you fall off like a high cliff, you land like in the snow. Mario's like stuck, has to pull himself out. So it's neat they add those kind of cute little things still in a Mario game. Another level here, Big Boo's Haunt. It's the only ghost house in the game, and it's kind of hidden in the outside courtyard area. This one's pretty cool. I always liked ghost houses, even though they frustrate me. But I like the variety, the music, just the whole kind of scene changes. It gives kind of a whole atmosphere as far as levels go whenever they started doing ghost houses and Mario World. And a lot of people from this one remember in your childhood nightmares is the jump scare, the piano on the second floor for some reason just attacks you and scares you. This one had, I think, a lot of the vague hints as well, just to kind of bring it in with the level of the ghost house kind of puzzles, with stars like go on a ghost hunt or ride Big Boo's merry-go-round. But again, still had 8 red coins, still had 100 coins in there somewhere. And I'm not sure if all levels were capped at 100 coins, if the earlier ones had more, so you just needed to get 100, or if it was the 100 total in the level. Either way, I feel like I always found those ones tough. Next level is Hazy Maze Cave. It's another water level, but it's got Nessie. We all love Nessie. You'd find Nessie eventually. And she'd take you to an island with a star on it. It also had like a kind of a toxic part of it with like this gas you weren't able to stand in. And I think Metal Mario could move through the gas. So I think he was a power-up you needed at one point. And that was kind of a mazy level with maze type stuff here and there, or sliding down places you couldn't get back up. But Still kind of a cool underground, underwater kind of level. Next one is Lethal Lava Land. That's our first kind of Bowser-like, lava-like level. And, it's tough, pretty kind of basic platforming. I think either, the lava stays static, but I think platforms kind of move up and down as far as sinking you into the lava. The real pain in the butt about the lava, everybody remembers, is Mario hits that lava, flies about 1,000 feet in the air with his ass on fire, and then wants to run around for what feels like 30 seconds while you try to get him to not run off another cliff, just to keep repeating that process. But again, it's another little challenge added as far as lava levels go, so I'm okay with it. Shifting Sand Land, I think, is like one of my favorites, and I don't know why, because it's kind of a pain in the butt of a level. It's got quicksand surrounding that pyramid that you'll die in. I know some of the stars involve flying, which isn't fun, or the one you have to fly either up to the top of these towers. I think you could cheat your way up there with a shell too, riding a shell. And then I think you'd have to wait for the bird. You got to get a star from him. And I don't know if it was just this level where I'd always lose my hat. I think the bird ended up with the hat somehow. Just another little neat thing in this game, at least. You could lose your hat, which is really kind of weird, seeing Mario with no hat and it's just hair kind of running around the levels. But the desert level also has some of the other classic Mario villains, like those, what are they, tall little prickly guys with a bunch of segments to them. I forget their name. But the other cool thing about that was that, like, you'd go into that pyramid and it turned into like its a whole nother level on the inside of that. So that was cool. I'll breeze through a couple more. You got Dire Docks, another water level that had like a Bowser's submarine on it. And I know you had to like swim through, I think, like these manta rings as it was swimming. And I feel like that was kind of semi-tough, but you're all right if you manage to get your coins. This was another one. It's like when you're with the 100 coin star, when you're floating underwater, trying to determine where these coins are versus you in the 3D space didn't translate very well. So that one was tough, but at least when you did get a coin, you got some of your life bar back. Moving on, we got Snowman's Land, another snow level, except kind of with like a tower in it as far as climbing a snowman. And that one also had like an igloo you could go into. Wet Dry World was kind of unique as far as I think you raise and lower the water levels. Very similar feature-wise, at least, to like the Water Temple in Ocarina. I don't feel like this one was too tough. Some new creatures. It's got like the water bug guys skimming across the water, but just another way to kind of show off the 3D of raising and lowering like the water level itself to access new areas. Next level we got Tall Mountain, just like it sounds. As the levels get a little more difficult as we go through the castle. By now, I think we're upstairs in the upstairs portraits. This one you got to kind of watch where you're walking a bit more and jumping, because it's all pretty much death if you fall off. So that kind of was the clutch kind of that level. Is that a lot of like narrow paths to try and make you, I guess, slow down as far as how much you're cranking on your joystick. And another one, so next level is probably another one of my favorites too, and it's Tiny Huge Island. And that takes the same concept from Super Mario 3 as far as a level where you're small and everything's kind of big, but in this case you switch between the two, where you're either super huge and can suddenly like jump over things to access things, or you got to shrink down super small to make it through tiny holes and things here and there. A lot of kind of secrets in that one, I think I had to do a lot of run-throughs on that, but still just kind of like a fun level. From there, we kind of get to like two of pretty much just like, let's make some super hard 3D levels and I think it's Tick-Tock Clock, and I think it's Rainbow Ride. And they're the two last levels. But they do kind of like punish you if you are not hitting some of these jumps and these gaps like precisely. And again, it's not perfect to do in Mario 64 with the camera. It's all still doable. I feel like on Rainbow Ride, I was rotating my camera so much between trying to see what was coming up and coins or that it might be in a different area. I think you had to like jump off the carpet, grab some coins, and then make it back to the carpet. And again, having to do these levels, if you enjoy the game, it's fun. But I can see where some reviews say it's tedious for the fact that you just jump out of a level just to jump right back into one. But 12-year-old me was digging it. So I think Rainbow Ride is kind of considered like the last level, and you're just riding a carpet on like a rainbow road type of thing. So it kind of gives you the rail as far as where the carpet's going to go. But it also it's all over open sky, so you fall and you're dead. It does have the old kind of gaming levels where you jump on it and it shakes a little bit. A couple seconds later, it drops. So a lot of that going on, but the whole game itself is really just, it's almost just like the best, most polished 3D tech demo that could be, as far as at the time, for taking these concepts and turning it into a Mario game. It's still kind of like ballsy. I mean, you have to go with Mario. I think at the same time as this, we had, was it Pilot Wings, Wave Race, a lot of, and those are both good games just to feature 3D environments, but it's hard to take something like 2D platforming and turn it into 3D. And, to this day, it's still, 2D platforming is still a thing, still its own thing. But even now you can find all these 3D platformer games that, it's almost like you can't rank them together, I don't think, because they're still just separate environments, and the challenges between a 3D platformer and between like a 2D platformer can vary too much, I think, to combine them together. It's kind of why I picked Mario 64 for my first kind of intro episode here, because there are other games I like better that I'd like to do more justice and give them a better treatment than whatever this rambling first episode is. But if you guys are hanging out here still and just like hearing about Mario, then you're just like me. And if you're like me, you run out of podcasts at work. And, is there anything sadder than catching up on a podcast or like a show you've been streaming and binging, and then you don't have anything anymore and you feel a little loss in your heart? So maybe this podcast will help fill that a little bit. But anyway, I mean, as a Mario game, so we've gone over all those main levels there. There's 3 Bowser encounters throughout it, and they just kind of get a little harder as you go, as far as like the platform you're on with Bowser will start to break away, or you've got to throw him more times onto the bombs. But it is just kind of I guess I'd say it's an easy fight in concept, but it can be tough to line up when you let go of Bowser to throw him onto these bombs out in space. Because the concept they wanted to, I would too, they wanted to use that 3D concept. So you grab Bowser by the tail and you swing him around with your joystick, and then you let go, throw him on a mine. So that's 3 encounters of that at various parts in the game, while also having a lot of secrets in the castle itself. Toad's got a couple of stars if you find him hiding. There's some secret slides. There's a secret star in the aquarium level. And there's also like the bunny chase, which I think was a tech demo as well that they then put in this game, as far as you chase this dumb little bunny and get a star from him when you do catch him. So we went over levels, and then the power-ups, they're not, there's no fire flower like 2D Mario, but there is you got the flying cap, and you've got the metal cap, and you've got the vanish cap. The vanish cap was used, I think, the most rarely. I think it gets you through like a wall or two. But I mean, Metal Mario, he can sink to the bottom of water and just walk. And I think he's pretty, invulnerable to attacks. And like I said, he can go through that noxious gas in the level or two that's in there. And then Wing Mario kind of is what he is. Like, he doesn't stay. It's kind of like the cape in that he doesn't stay floating. You kind of have to do like a dip and dive type of thing with him. Sometimes you can be fired out of a cannon with the wing cap on and give you a little more boost. But a lot of the wing cap stuff has you trying to fly through like circular circles of coins. And those can be a little tough when you're floating down and then back up. But that was all part of just learning what the 3D can do. And so other than that, yeah, you've got your Bowsers. And then, of course, is the end game. Let's talk end game. Let's talk secrets. I mean, you beat the game story-wise, and Peach is there, and she makes you a cake, and everything's fine. As far as a Mario game, no big fanfare or anything, but that's, pretty standard for Mario. The one thing, and one of the playground rumors, I'm sure, from back in the day was the playable Luigi aspect. It was the biggest rumor for a long time. And you can play other characters on like the re-release, on like the DS versions. But there was always that, what was it, a statue, I think, in the courtyard by the ghost house. Just had some sort of vague writing, very extremely pixelated writing that kind of looked like an L, kind of could have been Luigi. There was a lot of rumors around that as far as having a playable Luigi. It's like it was completely debunked, but then recently, in whatever that Nintendo gate was, they found a bunch of files, and they still had Luigi files. I think they were trying to get him in the game as a multiplayer, and it just didn't work out, so they scrapped him. The other weird end of game thing is you get your 120 stars, and the cannon in the field in front of the castle opens up. You can hop on that cannon, and you can shoot yourself to the rooftop, and you can see for the first time a 3D Yoshi standing there and gives you, I think, infinite lives or 100 lives when you've already beat the game and did everything to get 120 stars. But that's okay, because I'm like, it was kind of a weird kind of reward, but I mean, it's also one of those things that's like, I gotta get 120 stars. I gotta get on that roof and see Yoshi. There were other ways. The other fun thing about this game is all the glitches too. Because I know I got up on the rooftop without 120 stars. If you kind of fudge your way up one of the mountain sides there with jumping, you can get up there. And that was on the original 64. I know there's other ways since then, but it's kind of what makes Mario such a great game now, is you see it. There's just a huge community of speed running built around it. And I love speedrunners when they find like all these old glitches. Like some of the Ocarina speed runnings are insane. And just that people are still putting that much work into these games. And the other strange thing is just, all the groups or whatever I'm in with collectors and those kind of things, is the number of these like young 20-year-olds. They're like, I'm halfway through my 64 collection, or what game should I get next? Or you see people, post a picture of Perfect Dark and, hey, this is my first run through of this, or, my first run through of that. And they're really like enjoying these games. And, it makes my little heart happy. The 64, I was 12, 13 when this system was out. And, hitting those teenage years, you start to maybe look at girls more and video games less. But in my case, like gaming never really left. I grew up with the Nintendo to start, and then I remember getting Super Nintendo. I'll tell you this little tidbit. Whenever we do Super Mario 3, I remember opening that beautiful yellow cartridge at my birthday party at McDonald's, because I used to do those. So, what a 6-year-old birthday party, I tell you, at McDonald's, opening up Mario 3. I'm telling you guys, you 20-year-olds don't know how good it was back in the 80s, 90s. But anyway, let's wrap up Mario 64 here. I think we went over most of the levels, most of the gameplay. Your button controls are fairly simple as far as you run, jump. I didn't really go over the moves and things like that, but it was, there weren't instruction manuals or tutorial levels. I mean, there were, But it was like, if you were like me, you're just throwing that thing in the machine. And then I still to this day, it's like I'll start a game and then I need everyone stay away from me and give me 60 seconds to push every single button I can to see what every single thing does. And it's like, and then I'm going to start this game, so it's your basic jumps, but it was fun to have like a triple jump, a slide. And in the case that Mario's just punching things was kind of fun too. But if you're Mario, you're going to go for jumping on stuff as opposed to your punch or your grab. But we're going to get out of this time warp here. We're going to get into some awards for this game. And let's see how well my buttons were. I might have just got into podcast to make soundboards. I don't know. Let's see.
Aren't you a little old for video games?
That man is playing Galaga. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
Let's do all the things that you want to do.
Throw me a frickin' bone here. I'm the boss. Need the info.
I've lived in mortal terror that this would happen.
Get on with the ceremony!
All right, let's talk some awards here now. My first award for Super Mario 64 is going to be the Best Level Award. I mentioned it already, and it's tough to choose just one. It's going to be between, I know it's the first level, but I love Bob-omb Battlefield, and possibly I guess I'm going to throw in Shifting Sandland, and I'm going to throw in Tiny Huge Island. So, all right, we'll take Bob-omb Battlefield off. It's a nice level, but it is real basic as far as just kind of teaching you some 3D gimmicks. So I really like Shifting Sand. I remember going in that pyramid, and it was like a whole nother level. Obviously, it's like way bigger than the pyramid looks on the outside. You're just like in this pyramid all of a sudden. And there was a lot of fun with the turtle shell surfing around the sand. But I do like Tiny Huge Island. Let's see what some of those stars were. You had rematch with Koopa the Quick. You had to get your red coins off a Wiggler. All right, I guess I'll be a weirdo. I'm going to go with Tiny Huge Island. Tiny Huge Island, you're going to win that award. I like the tiny, I like the huge. We're going to go with that. Now, our next award here, let's see. Let's go with Best Power-Up. I mentioned it too at the beginning. There's only 3 technical power-ups. You've got the Vanish Cap, you've got the Metal Cap, you've got the Wing Cap. But man, there's that tiny little, don't know when they threw that in the game for fun, but you hop on a turtle, you knock him out of his shell, and you hop on that shell and you get, 20 seconds. Well, maybe it's infinite depending on if you bump into anything or not. And you can just fly around that level like Tony Hawk. So I'm going to give my best power-up. But, it's not going to be the Wing Cap. It's not going to be the Vanish Cap. Metal Mario has come and continued to be a part of the gaming sphere. I think he's got his own character in Mario Kart. He might have some. I haven't played like a lot of new Smash Brothers, but maybe Metal Mario's in there too. So I was, just for the sake of having a real power-up, I was going to go Shell, but I'm switching my mind, and I'm going to go Metal Mario. You are going to take the award for Best Power-Up in Super Mario 64. There's a lot more coming with as far as Mario, because what do we have next? Mario Sunshine and Flood, and that's his own whole little thing there. But we'll go with the Metal Cap on that. Now, final award is, of course, the best place to throw a baby penguin off a cliff. Now listen, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, the best place to throw that penguin off the cliff is right at the bottom of that slide, right outside of that house, right in view of his mom. You save him, you get your star, and then you go chuck him off the cliff, because I think that's how you get a star and a half. Don't quote me on that. Look it up. It's a cheat. You get a star and a half if you throw that baby penguin off. So eventually I'd like to get your guys' comments and reviews on whatever awards I like to make up. But let's give these games what they deserve. Before we get out of our final awards here, just a few more reviews. Carrot here says, easily a 10. I've played several near flawless games, but this isn't near flawless, it is flawless. This was the first of 2 games where Nintendo achieved true perfection. Best game ever. Now, in parentheses, if you can guess, if he's talking about Nintendo 64 achieving true perfection, and one of them being Mario 64, can you tell me what the other game is he's talking about? Here, do I have any sort of fun music? Here you go. Think about it while we play some of this. What could that other game be? Yeah, it's Ocarina of Time. Which I would agree with. And I don't know if Ocarina of Time is like overrated, because a lot of people, Majora's Mask aside, I'm excited to do an Ocarina of Time episode here soon for sure. Another review from Nintendojo says, I haven't met anybody who hasn't wasted at least half an hour just running around outside the castle, sliding, jumping, stopping, diving, swimming. There are no enemies here, and there's really nothing to do, but boy, is it fun. And we talked about that earlier. It's nice to just, in games nowadays, it's like the first level almost is the tutorial. You start playing these games, and it'll stop mid-action, and your little title screen comes up, hit X to jump, or hit A, or hit square to do this or that. And which is how it's weird when I try to get my kids to play some of these older games, and I'm just like, no, it's like, here's, you figure out the buttons. Sometimes you didn't have an instruction manual. Sometimes Blockbuster would print them on the back of their boxes, or other than that, you're just pushing buttons. And in this case, as I tell them when they're constantly failing, when I make my kids play some of the older games, it's all about repetition, where it's like that sprite isn't going to change. Every time you come across the screen, he's going to jump out right there, or he's going to jump up right here. And that's where a lot of like the joy from gaming came from, the repetition and kind of making it through these tough levels over hours or days. Or I remember being so frustrated with some games sometimes, before bed, I'd be like, I'm never playing this game again. And for some reason, as soon as I wake up, I'm like, I got to get on this game. And I think that's a lot of difference with kids and kind of the instant gratification nowadays, at least a lot of like the cell phone games with the tapping and the casino explosions and whatever the dopamine they're trying to pump into you to make you click another button. When it's like back in the day, you'd spend 3 hours of struggle, cord chewing, controller throwing, to beat this tough level or two, and you work 3 days for that dopamine fix, if that's what they call it. And I don't know if it made just kind of the experience different, especially Mario 64 was fun. It was fun to play and fun discovering things, but it's like even old RPGs back then, when you didn't have guides and you had to talk to every single person in town to see where you had to go next. And I think it's just made for a different gaming experience. Real quick, let's talk a remake versus a demake. As far as this game being demade, it's pretty much the oldest, like the farthest back you can go as far as 3D platforming, as far as any sort of demake without turning this into 2D. So I'd say it is, it's pretty the bottom as a demake. And as far as a remake, it is essentially Super Mario Odyssey. I feel like it is essentially just a remake of Super Mario 64. Doesn't, strictly have like the hub world, but it's the same concept of hopping into a world. It's open-ended. And then just kind of a vague description of, in this case, the moons you have to collect. And Super Mario Odyssey is a great game, and I can't wait for whenever Odyssey 2 comes out. Although that new Donkey Kong game on the Switch 2 is looking pretty sweet as far as it kind of looks like Mario Odyssey. So I'm wondering where they go with gameplay nowadays. But I wouldn't take a remake or a demake. I think everyone should experience Super Mario 64. Whether or not you get to 70 stars, whether you get to 120, or whether or not you just play around in the courtyard and run around the trees and watch how the trees they stay like the same direction as you spin around them and all that kind of fun stuff. So officially, as far as Mario 64, of course, this game rules. You know it, I know it, the internet knows it. Mario 64 rules. Go tell your friends on the playground. Go to Blockbuster, take that copy, go hide it behind a bad game so when you have the money you can go back and rent it. How's that? All right, crowd, shut up. Okay. So as far as next week, I'm going to pre-do some episodes and see if I get the hang of this at all. But next week, I'm going to do one of my favorite old games. We're going to the Super Nintendo. A lot of you might have not have played this, but I'm trying to save some of the big hitters for when I know what I'm doing. And next week, I'm going to talk about Secret of Evermore. There were a lot of Secret ofs games, and they were all RPGs, I feel like. But this one is unique in the fact that it's, I think, an American RPG, was never translated to Japan, when it's usually the opposite, where you get RPGs out of Japan that we then need to translate. And half the time we didn't get them from Japan because Japan thought we were too dumb for their RPGs. Same reason we got Mario 2 as it was instead of the Lost Levels. But that's actually probably a great thing that happened because I love Mario 2, and it gave us a lot of Mario lore and enemies that we wouldn't have got otherwise if they just made a harder Mario Brothers. So they know what they're doing here and there over at Nintendo, that's for sure. But anyway, we're going to wrap it up here. Once again, I'm Scuba Steve, just another 40-year-old something, bearded dad, husband, gamer. I want to thank you guys for listening to the show. Again, I have no idea what I'm doing. I do not speak for a living. I have zero social media presence. I've just essentially, I was a huge gamer. I had kids way too young, and it feels like I've been in a time capsule for the past 20 years because I focused just so much on work and raising kids. And obviously kind of gaming when I could, but I pretty much stuck to Nintendo. I had a PS1 when I was younger, and from there, I just got a PS5 a few months ago. So I played a lot of games through there, like at friends' houses, but I couldn't focus on gaming like I used to. But now my kids are older, and I want to hide in the basement from them, and I want to talk about video games, so I'm going to do that. I can do that once a week. Can I, internet? Can I? My kids think I'm cool, and my mom thinks I'm handsome, so that's got to be something, right? If you've made it this far, I figured out how to record a podcast. So I want to thank you guys again. This is a social experiment from me, so I'm hoping episodes get better. I'm hoping you guys can tell me things you want to talk about. I can play around with this format. We can come up with more games, but mainly right now, hit me up, thatgamerules@gmail.com. I will get some social media presence at some point. Also, I'm working on the website, but sign up at thatgamerules.com because that's how I want to be able to pre-send the list of games and awards because I want your guys' comments, I want your guys' awards, I want your guys' rankings, and we'll just kind of get through this together. So I'm going to find my fun little sound bar again. We're going to wrap it up, and thanks for stopping by. I'll see you guys next week.